Johnson. I'm the regional manager here at Doshi Steel. I've worked here for 7 years. I've been the regional manager here for the past 3. What? How dare you? You know, back in Iowa. And he says, where's the elevator?
So we heard that your company has considered moving to China. How is your branch dealing with the possibility of relocation?
My answer to that question is no, we're not. I haven't told my employees that, and I don't plan not to, because Doshi Steel is an American company, and taking away their jobs away from my workers is like taking away their constitutional right. My employees are very culturally diverse. You know Nicole out there? Yeah, Nicole, her grandfather was from Africa. And my employees get along very well despite the cultural differences.
What up, Ace? I'm just trying to make bank over here. I'm just trying to ask you a question. Break it down for me. Ooh, Chad. Stock market went up.
Very interesting.
Hello, my name is Marie, and I've come here to apply for a job at Doshi Steel.
Okay, let me just call Jonathan real quick.
Wow, what do we have here?
Jonathan, I was just about to call you. This is Marie, and she wants to apply to work here.
Marie, that sounds awfully French.
Yes, I moved here 3 years ago.
You're fired.
Pardon?
Do you know why?
Jonathan, don't.
Because it's an American company, and you're going to come take the jobs away from hardworking American folks.
Jonathan?
I wonder what her problem is.
You know, I went to school. I had promise. I wanted to be a historian. But then, I ended up here. I hate this job.
So why don't you quit?
I have nowhere else to go. You know, Jonathan is such a bigot. He means well, but he kind of reminds me of those Americans during the Gilded Age, you know, the ones that passed the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, who thought that the Chinese were stealing their jobs.
Yo, you suck, you foreigner! You come here, try to see that you can take our jobs. Well, you can't!
Jonathan, you cannot treat your employees like that. That is wrong and disrespectful, and that is not being a real American. So shake her hand.
Everybody knows about Ellis Island, how millions of immigrants came to America for freedom, saw the Statue of Liberty as a beacon of hope and of a symbol of new beginnings.
You never hear about Angel Island.
My great-grandmother was held there when she came to America. She used to say that her first weeks in the U.S. were anything but hopeful. Angel Island was an immigration station in San Francisco. It was like the Ellis Island of the West, but with more imprisonment. It opened in 1910 with the purpose of interrogating new immigrants to determine who was qualified to enter the United States.
Prior to 1882, Asian immigrants were free to enter the United States to occupy the jobs that were created by industrialization. 62,000 Chinese immigrants made the 3-week journey to Angel Island in Northern California. However, the Americans began to see the Chinese as a threat because they were willing to take more strenuous jobs for a lower wage.
The question was, what do you think of Jonathan?
Oh, he's okay.
A quote from Albert D. Richardson, a New York Tribune reporter, stated, "The rugged mountains looked like stupendous anthills. They swarmed with Chinese, shoveling, wheeling, carting, drilling, and blasting rocks on earth. Shoulder to shoulder, hour after hour, the Chinese railroad workers chipped away at the rock, breathing granite dust, sweating and panting by the dim, flickering glow of candlelight until even the strongest of them fainted from exhaustion." The white Americans' fear of the yellow peril or the fear of the Chinese completely taking over American jobs, spurred violence. In 1877, Dennis Kearney organized the Working Man's Party and rallied, "The Chinese must go." This led to the burning and looting of Chinese businesses.
As nativism grew, or the policy of protecting the rights of native inhabitants over immigrants, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882. This prohibited all Chinese from entering the United States except for those who were visitors, diplomats, or scholars.
To enter the country, the immigrants would claim that they had a family member living in America already, and they would be asked really specific questions to legitimize that. For example, they'd be asked, "What's the name of your village?" or "How many steps are there leading to your old house?" Hardly anyone could pass that test. The immigrants detained on Angel Island were known to write on the walls. They wrote about their fears and their regrets.
The Americans were so worried about protecting the opportunities and rights they had that they didn't want to give the immigrants the same chance to share the freedom that they could have had.
Life for European immigrants wasn't any better. In fact, life in America for everyone who wasn't a rich, white American was pretty tough. Immigrants lived in poverty and worked in factories where the conditions were bad and the pay was worse. What most Americans are familiar with were the immigrants entering from Ellis Island, who originated from Europe. The height of European immigration occurred from 1881 to 1890. The heightened time of immigration was the same time the United States was going through its industrialization period. Many Americans blamed the Eastern European immigrants for the turmoil, corruption, and crime that ensued. The Anglo-Saxon myth was introduced, which stated that anyone who was not Anglo-Saxon was inferior. Americans believed that they were the supreme race, and anyone who was not American wasn't as intelligent or as hardworking. It says in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. Of course, when our founding fathers wrote that, they didn't consider the Africans that they traded and sold as property and worked as slaves. You see, they didn't count.
I'm leaving, but today I want you to clean the parlor and wash the dishes and do the laundry. And make sure you watch Jimmy with those marbles. He's taken to eating them. Understood?
Slavery had been abolished before the Gilded Age, and according to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the Constitution, African Americans should have been completely equal to the rest of the American citizens, but they weren't. Especially in the South, African Americans were heavily discriminated against. They were expected to have certain respect for their white neighbors, even though there was no specific law ordering it. They knew what it would mean for them if they ignored the status quo.
Racial tension between African Americans and white Americans was already an established conflict by the time of the Gilded Age. In an effort to reinstate white supremacy over African Americans after Reconstruction, a series of laws called the Jim Crow laws were passed in order to segregate public areas such as schools, restaurants, and restrooms.
It was a mental thing, really. White Americans kept anyone different thinking that they weren't as good as them. If they had a different skin color or were born in a different country, they weren't worthy of the quality of life that white Americans were able to reach.
The American dream is all about freedom. The Constitution named all these rights for Americans, freedom of speech, trial by jury, and the right to vote. Those rights were meant for everyone, not just a certain portion of the American population. During the Gilded Age, only some people were allowed the freedom they were constitutionally entitled to. Everyone else, African Americans, immigrants, their freedom was limited because the people who had freedom were too scared to share. And if anybody stood up for what they believed in, and if anybody stood up for what they deserved, boom!
People were beat up, raped, murdered, or lynched for simply forgetting to call a white man Mr., for trying to improve their business, or for looking too long at a white woman. That was America to them.